It's time to talk grades. We'll talk grades with Wes Euler of Steeler Nation Radio right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, but also a closer look at Kenny Pickett. We talked a little bit about his day, but now that we've had the time to take it in, look at the film, we want to give our thoughts on how he did, where he is in his rookie season, and what else needs to be seen moving forward. That and all our stars and skull grades right here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button in the video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. We thank you for making Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, of course, is daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, and that's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Wes Euler rejoins us. It's been a minute since we've had him on the show. You can hear him on Steeler Nation Radio and on all. If there's a West Virginia podcast, he most likely runs it. He's on all of it. Wes, how you doing, friend?
I'm great, Chris. It's good to be back. Yeah, it's as you know, it's a hectic time of year for anybody who works and covers football, particularly when you're kind of burning the candle at both ends with an NFL team and a collegiate team, and just a lot of our scheduling kind of conflicts that you and I have. But I'm always glad to be back and to have some time to catch up with you and the Locked On listeners here.
Same here. I'm actually very excited to have you on. I wanted to look more at Kenny Pickett in this game real quick, and also Kenny Pickett as a whole, because you look at this game, you look at how things played out, and how it happened. You know, there's excitement that the Steelers put up 30 points, absolutely, and there's excitement that Kenny Pickett connected on some deep passes. He was on deep passes that went 20 yards or more to the left. He was 2 of 3 for 53 yards, 20 yards or more to the right, 2 of 4 for 57 yards, and a touchdown. No interceptions on any of those. That was encouraging. You want to see him do that more. He also was able to complete a pass beyond 10 yards. But still, you know, there were times he missed his open man. There was time that he didn't read the defense, missed the reads. But again, I think that when you're looking at this game and you're looking at how he's not making the crucial mistakes. There was a crucial mistake where he threw it to Zach Gentry in triple coverage that could have been intercepted. It wasn't worked out for him. But all in all, you know, he was going almost, I think he threw an interception in every game he had played up until the Saints game. Mm-hmm. And now you're seeing him at least manage the game a little bit better. And those are steps I think are important for a rookie quarterback.
Absolutely. So there's a whole lot to dissect here, right? But I think what you ended with there is the right place to start. I think there was a clear onus over the bye week with the offense and with Kenny, and just saying, hey, if we're going to win some games down the stretch here, we can't turn the ball over.
Right.
You know, you got TJ Watt back, which gives you a little bit more leeway on defense, right? But you still needed to be a +2 in that turnover margin on Sunday just to kind of be in that game down the stretch. Mm-hmm. That's just where this team is. That's the reality of the situation. We all knew coming into the year this team was built on a defense and the hope that they were going to be able to run the ball more consistently this season. The defense lost its best player in the first game, and the run game, while I think it has improved as well the last 2 weeks, obviously has been anything but consistent this year. For Kenny, I think there was a real onus of, hey, we got to take care of the football. Live to fight another play. You've seen some more of that with him. Just, if it's there, tuck it, run it, pick up a few yards, pick up the first down, get out of bounds, no big deal. If there's nothing there, if you can't run it, get rid of the football, throw it away, live to fight another down, no big deal. You've seen that growth in his game. That's been important. And I think now, you know, there's 7 games left here, Chris. That's when you start to get to the points where, okay, you've seen the progression through a few games with some of the key things they needed to clean up. Now where can you start to excel a little bit more, right? I think that's kind of the next over 7 games here. We've seen you take this this coaching and this priority that we gave you during the bye week of taking care of the football and not putting the defense in adverse situations and living to fight another down. okay, now let's build on that in these last 7 games. And I really am. I'm excited to see how it all looks down the stretch here, because obviously, as I'm sure you want to get into, there's still a couple key things that I'm sure they're trying to drill home with him here down the stretch.
Absolutely. One thing I think also that was a good sign, and this is part of the moxie. This is part of the things that this isn't, technical. This is more so how do you respond in the moment of pressure. The Bengals, according to Pro Football Focus, blitzed Kenny Pickett 9 times in this game. 8 times, he had 9 dropbacks. He got off 9 passes on those blitz. He completed 8 of those 9 passes for 114 yards and his touchdown pass to George Pickens. That's a really good showing when they went after him. And the Bengals even kind of talked about it after the game. I believe a few of them said we backed off him after a while, because it was like when you're blitzing, you were making it easier to read who's open at some point. And I think when they started going in kind of max coverage schemes, that's when Kenny Pickett, struggled a little bit more. But at least seeing him respond when under pressure, when having to deal with some heat and some adversity in his face, those are the reasons I think the Steelers went and got him, because when he does figure something out, he attacks it, and he attacks it aggressively.
Absolutely. And I think, that's another great one by you in terms of the things that we have seen some improvement on post bye week. Still not perfect. There's still some work to be done there.
And not even close to perfect.
He feels more comfortable in the pocket as well, too. Which,
I agree with that.
As you mentioned, I don't think the offensive line is as terrible as a lot of the fan base thinks it is, but they're certainly not good either, right?
Right. They're not a good group.
There is a middle ground there. I don't think they've been a mitigated disaster like some people act, but obviously they're not one of the better units in the NFL, certainly. So, rightfully so, there was some, I don't know if you want to call it skittishness when he was in the pocket, right? Maybe
Absolutely.
A little jittery there in his first couple starts. And I think that was a combination of the offensive line, of him being, new and getting his feet wet. And to his credit, he's an athletic guy. And when he was in college, there were a lot of times that he was able to just bail out of pockets and make it happen because he was that good at the collegiate level. In the NFL, that's much more difficult to do, particularly when you're a rookie. So I think he's gotten a little bit more comfortable in the pocket the last 2 games. Still not perfect. Again, there I think are a couple times where maybe he felt rushed on Sunday, but overall much better. We haven't seen him bailing out of a clean pocket, which we saw a few times before the bye week. We haven't seen him kind of getting himself into trouble where he tried to use his mobility to move and ended up kind of running into pressure. He's been much better with the football. He's been, I think, more comfortable in the pocket. Again, not perfect, not where he wants to be or where they want him to be, but you've seen that growth and that progress, which, again, coming off a bye week, I think that was the most realistic route here. And that's another area where it feels like they've clearly drilled this down with him, and he's starting to, to pick up what they're putting down.
Right. And there's only so many things you can drill down right now with a rookie when the game's moving so fast and you have to adapt
your game.
Can't throw
7 things at him.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing is, can he get these couple things right in this season? And I think that you've seen some of that do it. He's eliminating the turnovers. He's eliminating the big mistakes. There's sometimes I think he could take a better shot in a situation. There's plenty of times where I think he could take a better advantage of an open guy, like George Pickens when he broke for the end zone and he overthrew him and George Pickens fell down. That was a play when as soon as George Pickens broke, I was sitting in the press box like, oh, that's a touchdown. And then Kenny Pickett kind of like stared at it. And granted, it would have been called back for a hold anyways, but still, it was just a moment where like if it just clicks a little bit faster, maybe it can work. But still, like you said, he's not going to take gigantic bounds right now. He's going to be taking small, considerate steps because you want them to be steady steps. You don't want to ask him to take these huge leaps and then end up hurting himself. You want him to take his time, get his feet under him, and then as you go along, you're going to start tacking on things. You're going to start tacking on details to this game, understanding where to go and when to go and how the offense works around you and how you can use certain playmakers to take away weaknesses or attack weaknesses from the other team. Takes time to get there. We both think he's getting there. It's just, again, very early stages, but like the progress that we've seen in those early stages. We got to talk about Kenny Pickett. It's great as well as the other grades of all the players. Stars and Skulls coming up right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, so don't go away. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Turo. Turo is, of course, the number one option for everyone to go out there and be able to get their new car off the market, but do it in a car sharing marketplace that Turo does. When you go to Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts, and you can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. Book a spacious SUV or a minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. We're also brought to you by Prize Picks. And Prize Picks, as you know, is the fun new daily fantasy game that everybody is talking about. All you have to do to play Prize Picks, and it's really easy, is just pick 2 to 5 players that you think you have a fix on for how they're going to do in fantasy. And all you have to do is get right whether they get more or less than their Prize Picks projected stats. And that means if you came into that game and you thought that Najee Harris was going to get more than 70 yards rushing, well, you would have won money from Prize Picks because he got over that. And when you stack up players like that, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against others. You're not going into a pool of 1,000 people that you're up against. You're just up against the house and what Prize Picks says. And Prize Picks doesn't just do this for the NFL. They also do the NBA, NHL, college sports, and much, much more. Download Prize Picks apps today or go to prizepick.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDO, and all one word, all capital letters, at prizepicks.com or by downloading the Prize Picks app. And y'all know when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Wes, it's time to do grades, baby.
My favorite. I love it.
So
you've just real quick for the audience out there, Chris has taken something that everybody in the business does.
Thank you.
He's taken grades, right? Report card, whatever. He's taken something everybody in the business does, but he's found a way to make it uniquely his own with the stars and the skulls. And that is half the battle in this business. I love it. And hats off to you.
Thank you very much.
As
I
Heinz
appreciate that.
As Heinz Ward would say, sometimes you just got to take your hat off and give it to him.
He did used to say that. But in all seriousness, our grades and what Wes is talking about, if you're new to the show, we don't do A, B's, and C's. We do stars and skulls. And basically going off of like old football decals, stars mean you did something good. If you have 1 star a day, you had a good play with kind of a good day. If you had 2 stars, you had a great play and kind of a good day with it. 3 stars mean an elite performance, all time, like all pro worthy day. And vice versa. 1 skull means you had a bad play, but not like really a terrible game, just a bad play. You never kind of redeemed yourself. A bad game as a whole is 2 skulls where you kind of played really poorly. And then 3 skulls is all time terrible. You need to ride the bench. So let's start with the good. I think that's easier to do it in this game. There are no 3-star players this week, but Wes, I want to get your thoughts on my 2 stars. Okay. I got Najee Harris, Cam Heyward, TJ Watt, and a surprise, Kevin Dotson.
Ooh.
So I had Najee Harris because the guy had 2 touchdowns, 116 all-purpose yards. I do think he's figuring things out. He was the best weapon the Steelers had in this game. Cam Heyward, when you look back at what he was doing, he was getting after the Bengals. He got a sack. He was changing line of scrimmage. He was a big part of why the Bengals never could run the ball. Really liked his efforts in this game. Also on that list, TJ Watt, even though he only had half a sack, that interception was ridiculous. He was getting pressures even while being held, and he also was helping stuff the run. Huge game for him, even though the Steelers lost, they give up points. But the guy that I think everyone's going to be like, really? Kevin Dotson? Go back and look at the film, y'all. And this is what I do. I watch the film before I do these grades. But Kevin Dotson didn't give up a single pressure from his gap and was bullying people in the run game. He was absolutely part of the reason the Steelers were able to run the ball. A huge rebound, Wes, because he had been struggling.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought Kevin Dotson played well. We could talk a lot about the struggles of the offensive line, and I'm sure we'll probably do that here when you get to your skulls. But Kevin Dotson, I thought quietly, and then when you go back and watch the tape, confirms it. Played his best game of the year by far. TJ Watt has to be on there, Chris. I mean, that's one of the most ridiculous interceptions that I've ever seen in my life.
He's done it twice this year now.
Just an insane play, just a freakish play. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 guys in the NFL that can make a play like that, and he's one of them. It's just ridiculous. And then Najee Harris and Cam Heyward, I completely agree. I like that. And Chris, I don't think it's coincidence that post-bye week now, with Najee, I think it's an absolute that these last 2 games have been his best 2 games of the season.
Absolutely.
I think you could say that with Cam Heyward as well, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think both of those guys have clearly had some nagging injuries, some lingering stuff that they've been dealing with. They get the bye week to rest up, back-to-back home games, no travel in there, right? So some more recovery time or some easier recovery maybe. I don't think it's coincidence that those 2 have played well the last 2 weeks when they just clearly needed a blow. You know what I mean? They needed a week to rest and get back to not 100%, obviously. And this, I don't want to make this sound like it's like a video game either, where you pick up a little life in the quarter and all of a sudden you go from 70% healthy to 90% healthy, right? But sometimes just a week off to just kind of reset a little bit and get back closer to feeling good. I think you've seen that from Najee and Cam over these last 2 games.
Absolutely. We're going on to our 1-star guys for this game. And there were quite a few of these guys. When I look back on the film, there were guys who were doing a lot of the little things right. Let's start off with the defensive line additions. We had Chris Wormley, Larry Ogunjobi, and Montrevious Adams. They were all, I thought, Wes, really good in stuffing the run. They weren't as much the pass rushers, but they were really important in plugging up the holes up the middle. I felt like they collectively put together a better game. It was encouraging to see that group playing well together. Especially I saw Larry Ogunjobi. The more he was out there, the more plays he was able to make.
Yeah, he was. And that was another one of those, listen, it's disappointing because Joe Mixon exited the game and you still felt like Samaje Perine killed you.
But it wasn't on the run.
It wasn't on the ground.
Right.
You look statistically, and I think just visually, whether you're watching film or you just watch the game on Sunday, the Bengals offense was able to move the football, and they were able to score points, but they weren't able to do that on the ground. It was almost all primarily through the air. So I'm with you. Those guys, I think, quietly did their job. They didn't have sexy games with a bunch of splash plays or anything like that, but they at least made the Bengals offense one-dimensional. Now, you weren't able to execute the way you wanted to from that, but in terms of their responsibilities, which are primarily in the run game, I do think they did well there.
I do think they did well there as well. That's why I gave them each of them stars in this game. Back to the 1-stars list here. The offensive line, I actually gave some decent grades to a couple of guys, Mason Cole and James Daniels. When I look back and I was looking at how they played in this game, Wes, I was looking to see, where the pressures were coming from and how bad things got for Kenny Pickett. Mason Cole, I only counted really one time that he kind of gave up some pressure up the middle, but for the most part, he controlled his gap, and I thought he was decent in the run game, kind of kept the team together. And I also say James Daniels, he did give up 2 pressures, but he was much better in the run this week. I think that these guys are starting to figure out how to play together, and that's a good sign for this offense. They still have to get better in pass pro. It's funny. They started off the year terrible in the run blocking, decent in pass pro. Now they're decent in run blocking, terrible in pass pro at times. But for this game, I thought those 2 guys did step up.
I like how you say that because you're absolutely right. At the beginning of the year, they were having success in pass protection, but they were struggling to open holes in the run game. Now it's been the opposite, and it's frustrating how that works, make you want to pull your hair out. But you're right. Mason Cole, especially there, Chris, you noticed his absence when he was gone. I mean, without a doubt there, and we all know, listen, JC's a capable guy, but he's not Mason Cole. And so I'm with you. They've been inconsistent. That's the biggest thing with the offensive line as a whole. They've had moments where they've done well. They've had moments where they've really struggled. There hasn't been a ton of consistency there. It's been very up and down, or it'll be one game where they really struggle in pass protection, but they did pretty well in terms of the road grade there. I think James Daniel, Mason Cole, maybe not quite the performance that Kevin Dotson had, and Mason Cole obviously not getting as many reps as those guys, but I'm with you. It was the interior of the offensive line, I think, did their job on Sunday. It was the bookends, the tackles who left you wanting more.
Right, and we're going to get into those in our Skulls segments because they were definitely a part of that. But back to the rest of our one stars, because I said we had quite a few. So defensive line, offensive line, better job in this game. Some skill players, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens. I would have put George Pickens in the 2 stars if it wasn't for the drop that he had in the fourth quarter. If he catches that for a touchdown, one, I do think it changes the trajectory of the game a little bit. I know they still would have had to come up with an onside kick, but they would have had some timeouts. Because they spent them after that drop trying to get into the end zone. But still, I liked what I saw from him. He absolutely deserves a star. Pat Freiermuth gets a star. Not 2 stars because he had some big plays, but he needed to for 2 stars. You got to get like in the end zone, and I think that's where he didn't get in there. That's just
costly holding penalty as well too.
And that holding penalty did bring it back, but I felt like he did enough in the receiving game to warrant that. I also gave Kenny Pickett 1 star in this game. I felt that again. Good signs, not great signs, not overwhelming, but he connected on some deep balls. They finally scored from a little far out, and there's encouraging things to move forward with there. Defensive guys, though, I also threw in Devin Bush and Alex Highsmith and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Devin Bush, when I looked back at it, he may have not been like the ultimate answer, but he was helping. He was a big part of stuffing the run. He's more aggressively addressing offensive linemen when they try to come up on him and block. I think he's getting much better in that department in playing the run. He did give up some plays, but I think the biggest thing that he gave up was the quote unquote gave up. When you look at like Pro Football Focus charting, they charged him with the touchdown on the screen pass to Perrine when he was blocked in the back. And I was kind of like, that's hard to put on him. I mean, technically, yeah, he's the closest guy there, but he was pushed to the ground on a play where the Bengals also had a guy 5 yards downfield who should have been called back for illegal man downfield. So I was a little against that, but all in all, I thought Devin Bush played better. Also, last guy on the list here, Matthew Wright, going 3 for 3 on field goals. I gave him some skulls I gave him a skull last week for missing the field goals. This week he cleaned it up.
Yeah, no, he did. And, last week you were kind of in the context of Matthew Wright saying, hey, you're able to beat the Saints by 10 points. It didn't end up costing you. But, man, in a closer game, that could have been the difference. He's able to respond from that, take care of business this week in not terrible conditions at Heinz Field. Dang it, I did it, at Acrisure Stadium. But it was cold and it was windy. Like, it wasn't brutally cold and it wasn't crazy windy, but it was cold and it was windy, and he was able to respond after a tough game a week later and go out there and do his job. I think that was encouraging to see. And then Devin Bush, Chris, I don't want to sound like a Devin Bush apologist, all right? Because I'm certainly not that. If I'm gonna pick a hill to die on, it's not gonna be the hill of Devin Bush, okay? No. But there's this really weird thing going on, and sometimes I do this too much, where I gauge the Steelers fan base just off of Twitter, and we all know that that's just not reality. It's just not. But it's like if he makes 1 or 2 bad plays a game, and it's all over Twitter, and everybody crushes him, and this guy sucks, and get him out of here. And then 90% of the time, he's quietly doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. Like Devin Bush is an NFL linebacker.
Yep.
I'm not saying he's living up to that top 10 hype. I'm not saying he's great. I'm not saying he's an all-pro or a Pro Bowler or anything like that, or even that he deserves another contract from the Steelers. But he has been an NFL linebacker this year. He belongs on the field on Sundays. And again, that's not what you traded up into the top 10 to get. But at the same time, I know we're all disappointed because in the grand scheme of things, you can certainly label him a bust. But this season, he's not been the issue on defense. He hasn't been a superstar all-pro, but he's making a lot more good plays out there than he is disastrous ones.
I agree, and that's why I gave him a star in this game. Retroactively, I gave him a star in the last game. When I looked more, I was watching more of the last game, and I realized I was a little harsher on him. I didn't give him anything. I thought I was kind of mud when I was watching. Like, yeah, he wasn't making plays, but he was part of helping other people make plays, and you need guys like that for the Steelers. But there were plenty of guys who got skulls in this game. We'll go over all the skulls in just a little bit here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, so don't go anywhere. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at BetOnline. BetOnline, of course, is the #1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. Be sure to go there to check out all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including everything that's going on with the NFL and NHL and NBA seasons. It's a great time for sports. Also, World Cup action, anybody? You see Wes is in his gear here in his studio right now. The US they tied at 1-1. It was a close one, but they got more action coming. You can get it on all the action on betonline.net. Again, your number one source for all your continued sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Wes Euler. We are talking all things here about the Steelers' grades from their loss to the Bengals. All right, it's time to get to skulls, and I got quite a few. We're gonna start the low and go to the high.
Okay.
One skull, guys. I got Chukwuma Okorafor. I didn't feel like he crushed the Steelers' offensive line, but he wasn't good. Gave up pressures and wasn't really part of the run game success. That's always been a criticism of mine of Chukwuma Okorafor. I've always thought like he needs to be more aggressive. He needs to be more. He needs to attack more. He's not doing that enough still. And if you're not being an elite pass pro, offensive tackle, I think you're putting yourself behind the eight ball. My other one skull guys, and again, we got more skulls coming, y'all, so don't think this is just it. But my other one skull guys, Miles Jack, I felt like he didn't do enough to help. He helped in the run game, but I felt like when he's supposed to be better in the pass, that's why they got him, and he wasn't enough in this game. Terrell Edmunds, I didn't feel like Terrell Edmunds was terrible in this game, but he was targeted twice and gave up 9 yards once and 24 yards another time. There weren't any other redeeming plays that I saw him provide. That's where he has to help be better. Cam Sutton, he gave up 3 catches, 3 of 5 targets in this game. Not terrible, but I felt like there were some first downs that he gave up that were crucial. Levi Wallace would be on this list if it weren't for the breakup in the interception that he had. He did give up a touchdown in this game, so he shares some blame, but that's why I neutralized his skull, because he did make some plays to kind of balance that out. Wasn't as much his fault there. And the last guy, though, Deontay Johnson, part of it, I think that Deontay Johnson needs to get more open. They're paying him $18 million. And I know that part of this is also Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada themselves not working, not making sure that Deontay Johnson is into the scheme. But there were still times I felt like Deontay could have been doing more to get open. And just so far this year, he hasn't lived up to the hype of the money.
No, he is not. I will say this for Deontay. I do feel like in large part this season, he's done a good job of getting open.
I'll say that this was a difference today.
He didn't this past Sunday. In large part, though, Deontay at a very elite level gets separation.
I agree.
Now,
in most games,
we could talk about his hands. We could talk about the drops, all these different things. That's a different conversation. We could talk about the explosive play capability, all that different stuff, the yak. But he does get separation normally at a very elite level. That was not the case on Sunday. And I don't know, Chris. It's just starting to feel like something's off there. I think we all thought whenever, especially whenever Chase Claypool got traded, all right, you're going to get Freiermuth more involved, and now there's going to be more targets to go to Pickens and Deontay. There have been more targets for Pickens. Freiermuth's still getting targeted. But, I mean, Najee Harris was targeted more in the pass game on Sunday than Deontay Johnson was.
Yeah.
And, hey, Najee is capable out of the backfield. He ain't Lev Bell out of the backfield, but he's capable.
But he's also not your number one receiver.
He's also not your number one. He should not be getting more targets in a game than Deontay Johnson, the guy that you are paying like a number one wide receiver. Mm-hmm. So there was a little disconnect on Sunday. I don't know if it was just one of those games. Like, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill here, right? Mm-hmm. It could have just been one of those games. And we always, too, like, we watch tape, we watch film, we go back and look at things through black and gold glasses. It's certainly possible there was something that Cincinnati was doing as well, too, that maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention to because I'm focused in on Deontay. But it was not a typical separation game from him. And because of that, I mean, like I said, they targeted Najee Harris more in the pass game than Deontay Johnson. There's a disconnect there, and that's something that I'd like to see them get moving in the right direction these last 7 games as well, too.
Agreed on that. We're on the same page there. Let's go to our 2 skull guys, because I think there's some of these guys, people are wondering who made 2 skull and who made 3 skulls. Here's our 2 skulls, Dan Moore Jr. and Robert Spillane. Now, some people are thinking, why didn't Robert Spillane get 3 skulls, Chris? Well, Chris went back and looked at the tape, And I will give Robert Spillane credit for this. He was decent against the run, came up and filled in those opportunities there. And that's the only thing that saved him from being a 3 skull. But targeted 3 times, gave up 29 yards and the touchdown, missed the tackle on the flat. And like, that was the one where, like, you know what? If you get caught just getting juiced in space, you know, before the pass is thrown and you're not a good coverage man, that's one thing. But when the play's in front of you and you have a chance to bring him down, that's where you absolutely had to. And that was such a crushing play. If he makes that play and the Steelers hold them to a field goal, it's a different ball game.
Yep, 100%. You're absolutely right. And isn't that kind of that's the opposite of what we've expected from Robert Spillane throughout his career. We know he's not a superstar, and I mean, yeah, he did have the huge interception a few years ago to start that game in Baltimore against the Ravens. But like, we don't expect splash plays from Robert Spillane. What we expect is for him to be the fundamentally sound guy who fills gaps and who makes those tackles. And so yeah, that was really tough to see, because of all the guys in that situation, he'd be one of the ones you think you could count on, and it ended up costing you.
I agree with you there. Dan Moore Jr., a 2 skull guy here. When I was looking back at the pressure that was being allowed, Dan Moore Jr., Pro Football Focus rated him to give up 5 pressures in this game. He gave up a sack that was very obvious on Kenny Pickett. 3 hurries, 5 pressures. Those are just the things that you can't do if you're the left tackle. You got to be better there. The reason he's not 3 skulls is because I felt in the run blocking, especially with Kevin Dotson, he fed off that a little bit better, but still was not good in that department. That's why he gets 2 skulls. This was a bad showing for him, Wes. And I think it's even more concerning as far as the Steelers is like, you know, I think they were hoping that they could find a way to make him a usable offensive tackle so that they could kind of keep him around. But at this point, you know, the Steelers with their draft picks and their free agent investments coming up this year, left tackle is almost a must. And then you're going to be looking at Dan Moore like, all right, is he going to be a guy who floats around as this kind of the 6th man on the offensive line? Are they going to move him to guard? But he's really looking like he just can't stay there if you want to protect Kenny Pickett for the long term.
He's struggled. I mean, there's no other way to dance around that.
Yeah.
He struggled at moments his rookie season, but I think we all thought, you know what, overall for a 4th round pick who was kind of thrown into the fire there, he held his own. And I think rightfully so. There was some, some optimism that he could be the guy long term, and again, maybe not be a superstar all-pro at that position, but be a long-term capable starter, which is historically kind of what the Steelers have had at the tackle position, right?
Yeah.
Most of their Alan Fanekas and their Dermontti Dawsons and those type of guys, Pouncey, DeCastro, have been interior linemen. Mike Webster, like you go down the list of the Hall of Famers and the all-pros there. The Steelers have a much more storied history with their interior offensive linemen than they do the tackle position, but they've had a lot of good, steady players on the outsides there, and I think there was rightfully so hope that Dan Moore could be that guy this year, but it's gone in the opposite direction. Yeah. And you're right. That's something you can't mess around with when you've got a guy that you are hoping is your next franchise quarterback, that you are grooming and growing into that role. He can't be getting hit. He can't be getting pressured. You can't have plays blowing up as fast as they have been at times because of the performance of your left tackle. And so I know it's easy to say in hindsight now, should have probably brought somebody in there for competition, for something. Because they are a little thin there at the tackle position. But you're absolutely right. This offseason, whether it be draft, whether it be free agency, particularly now with Andy Weidl kind of heavy involved in things here, and we see the beast that he's built in Philadelphia in the trenches in terms of their offensive and defensive line that the Eagles have, both respectively one of the best units in the NFL on both sides of the football. I don't expect them to stand pat if this is something that continues, at the back half of the season here.
Agreed there. It's time to go to our 3 skull.
Oh, no. I'm
nervous. I think we have one 3 skull here. I think everyone knows who that 3 skull is, and it was Arthur Maulet. Just a really, really rough game when you go back and I was talking with Alan Saunders about this in the Final Word. Alan Saunders is Steelers now, and he was like, it wasn't that bad. He was only targeted a few times. Nah, he was targeted a bunch. He was targeted 9 times, gave up 6 receptions, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Just victimized a lot, especially in key situations. And Wes, it's to the point, I don't know about you, where just teams are knowing to go after him and Robert Spillane now when they're in trouble, and it's and especially good teams. I think that is a problem, and I think this is why the focus of my Monday episode was that I think the Steelers, they've done a good job in a lot of games this year scheming to protect those weaknesses, to not allow Arthur Maulet to get solo targeted a lot, to not allow Robert Spillane to get exposed, in crucial situations that ultimately cost the game. It didn't happen this time, but still, Arthur Maulet I think he's fine when he's blitzing the quarterback and he's helping against the run. He's a spirited individual. He deserves credit for going out there and fighting and giving his all. He's just not a good cover man right now.
He's not. And what's I think even more so frustrating about what we saw on Sunday, Chris, is it's not like he was just getting burnt out there, right? It's not like he was missing assignments. He was in the wrong place. Guys were running open behind him. Like, on a lot of those plays, he was right there, and just contested catch after contested catch. Guys, just whether it be T. Higgins, the majority of the time, just out battling him for 50-50 footballs, those combat catches that we talk about ad nauseum. It's all right if you lose a couple of those, right? The other wide receivers are good. They're highly compensated. They're professionals. They're in the National Football League as well, too. They're allowed to make plays. But when it happened as consistently as it did on Sunday, it's alarming. Because, like I said, it'd be one thing if you just thought I was about to say it was up here, and then I realized that the majority, a lot of people are listening to this too, not just watching our goofy selves on YouTube. So you gotta do this for radio too here, Eulder. It's not like it was just mental breakdowns on Sunday.
Yeah.
And in a way, it'd be easier to live with if it was. You'd say, all right, well, we'll get in the film room. We'll work on communication extra this week. We'll stress communication. He'll be fine. We'll clean it up. We'll make sure he's where he needs to be. He's where he needs to be.
Yeah.
Those combat catches, man, it was very one-sided on Sunday, and not the entire season, but a lot of other Sundays. That's something that we've seen as well too.
And it's proven costly. Wes, I have to apologize to our audience that I forgot. There was one 3-skull person that I forgot to put on this list.
Wes Euler.
No, but it was a person It was a factor that was supposed to be in this game that wasn't in this game.
Okay.
And they were non-existent. My man, you guessed it. The Pigeons! They get 3 skulls! They didn't show up! Where were the Pigeons?
Put the Pigeons on the 3 skulls.
They get 3 skulls. They got 3 stars last week because they were a big part of why they beat the Saints. And then this week, they just don't even show up. I guess their migrating pattern took them away from the field by nighttime. But my goodness, when you needed the Pigeons, they left you hanging. 3 skulls to the Pigeons. Can't believe these guys.
The poor Pigeons out here catching strays. I mean, Chris, you know what they say: the Pigeons giveth, and the Pigeons taketh away.
That's totally what they say. That's totally a saying.
They were like college freshmen. They showed up for the tailgate. They showed up for the tailgate and the fun and the party, and then once kickoff happened, they dipped out of there. We're gone. We're gonna go find something else to do.
They were there early, and like also there are more of them now. I was there covering Pitt versus Duke.
They're growing in numbers.
They were huge. Like it was. It was concerning.
Some of the pictures from that Duke-Pitt game are nuts. There's one, I'm sure you saw it, one of the defensive backs for Duke. He's standing, and there's like 36 Pigeons behind him.
Just all around it.
It looks like a scene out of a movie.
Punt returners that were just like I just have to guess and hope that it doesn't cause it. I will say this though, because I saw some people say, I saw it put out there that the Steelers, they're so irresponsible for allowing this to happen. And then like I went and turned to like 3 people in the press box. I'm like, we've seen this before, right? They're like, yeah, every place that has a shoreline deals with this at some point.
Yes,
in the stadium. The San Francisco Giants deal with it a lot. I mean, hey, there's a video of Randy Johnson killing a bird with a fastball. Are we kidding me? Are we kidding ourselves right now?
Don't tell PETA about that video.
Oh no, don't tell PETA about the video. But the Pigeons at Pittsburgh are safe, but not safe on these graves. They get 3 skulls. The PETA might be coming for me, though.
Catching strays.
Yeah, get out of here, Pigeons. Anyways, thanks again for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. Wes, thank you for joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yes, absolutely. Steelers Nation Radio with Arthur Moats at noon on Steelers.com, Steelers app, iHeartRadio, Steelers Nation Radio, all the radios.
All the radios.
You can also just get us in podcast form wherever you get your podcast, Steelers Blitz. And yes, if you are a tortured Mountaineer soul like me, like Chris said at the beginning, I do all the WVU things. In the Gun, that is the football podcast, football show that I'm part of. And then Ears and Beers with our buddy Adam Crowley. We're more of a WVU Hoops podcast now. A little football and other stuff in there too. But big week this week, Chris. Mountaineers out in Oregon for the Phil Knight Classic.
Oh, that sounds really
cool. Playing
Purdue
and Gonzaga
court.
And somebody else. Yeah, so if you're a tortured Mountaineer soul and you're ready for basketball season, because we're dang sure done with football season, that's where you can get all your fixins.
Absolutely. Do check out Wes, Adam, and everybody that he teams up with. They do a great job out there. The Crown Man and everybody. Thanks again, Wes, for joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and check out this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. Thanks again for checking out the show. We'll be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers, getting you ready for the rest of the week.